Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be making this Tiny King's Feast table. I'm starting out with a pattern that may look familiar. I made it in Photoshop a few videos ago, and this is the pattern I used for my original fantasy room box in this series. The only thing I did differently was add some height between the windows and the floor, and then I tripled the pattern so I have it 3 times as long. These 2 bottom pieces are the side pieces that I decided not to use in this build. I'm cutting out the window panes individually. Am I insane? Yes, I'm insane for this. I wish I had one of those Cricut cutters or something to do this, but for now we gotta do it by hand. I used some black acrylic paint and painted over the parts that are gonna show through the cutout of the stone that's gonna go over the top of this, and then I set that to the side. I have another copy of the same paper that I'm using to cut out the paperboard. I'm just going to transfer over the guidelines using some transfer paper. Now I cut out the inside parts for the windows, and I need to make the stone to go over the top, so I'm cutting a really thin piece of foam. This is pink insulation foam that you can get at the hardware store. I'm going to trace the exact same shapes and then cut out the windows from this part too. And now I'm ready to start making the stone texture. I'm drawing in all of the lines where I want the stones to go using a soldering iron, but this soldering iron is not on. When I used it with the heat, it just melted the foam too much. Now we're gonna go in and add tons of different colors of gray because I actually wasn't sure what color gray I wanted anything to be. After a few coats of paint to cover up the pink of the insulation foam, I finally went in and added some texture, and I used a rolled up piece of tinfoil for that. And now I'm just dry brushing to bring out that stone texture that I made. Now it's time to put the walls together. This is the back piece. I painted the front and the back gray so that it would look good from both sides. And I'm using Uhu glue to glue down these plastic windows. This sheet of plastic is just a recycled sheet of plastic that I found somewhere. I glued that down and sandwiched it between the paper that I painted earlier. And on top of that, I'm putting the foam stone layer that we made. I just have to trim off a little bit from the bottom so that it fits together nicely with the floor. Now that that's all assembled, the floor looks a little bit flat to me, so I'm going to go in and add a couple of different stones here and there just to break it up. Now that the room is assembled, it's time to move on to the furniture. I'm using some more paperboard and some transfer paper, and I've made a bunch of different parts of the chairs to assemble. I have the front, the seat, and the back. I've got my trusty Dremel here, and I've attached a little engraving tool to the end that I'm going in and engraving lines into the back of this chair with. And then I did that 8 more times. Now I'm going to glue together the paperboard, and I added a little bit of wood for the seats too because I felt like this paperboard was too thin. To make sure that blends seamlessly, I'm just going to sand it together. And now I can glue these parts together, and voila, we have a chair. Let's make 8 more. I did the same techniques with the table, but kind of in reverse. I felt like the legs of the table were too thin, so I added paperboard to that. Let's get all of this painted. I used some brown acrylic paint, but it felt a little too clean, so I'm going to weather it with some sandpaper. especially the tabletop, because this tabletop is going to have seen a lot of feasts and activity and everything. So we're going to put some scratches into that and make it look a little bit more used. Now the table and chairs are ready. I'm going to move on to making a bunch of tiny dishes. I created the mold for these dishes using some green stuff putty and some plastic. And now I'm using my homemade vacuum former to create these tiny shapes for the bowls and the plates. I'm going to be linking a lot of videos in the description box because I feel like I used a lot of techniques in this video that I go into detail in those videos for. So if you want to check out how I made this vacuum former, I'll have that linked there. Now I'm using some more plastic to create the tiny spoons and forks. I believe this was 0.2 millimeters thick, but I'm not 100% sure because I have a lot of scraps just lying around and they're not marked. Once I have my little dishes assembled, I'm going over and spray painting them using my airbrush. I primed them, then used black acrylic paint for the base coat, and then went over that with Tamiya silver acrylic airbrush paint. And now it's time to make these tiny foods. This is my favorite part of the build. I'm using some cold porcelain that I made in the previous video. I'll link it up here somewhere on the screen. And I'm just gonna mix in some acrylic paint to get a basic color. In this case, I'm making a rack of lamb, so the basic color is pink for the meat. I go over the outside of the foods with another coat of acrylic paint for the skin or peel or whatever the case may be based on whatever food I'm making. I'm basically adding all the details. And you can paint on cold porcelain while it's still wet, which is one of the nice things about it. And then when it dries, it just has that color already built in. These tiny pieces of cold porcelain dried extremely quickly, so usually you have to leave it overnight, but I could do a lot of things with this right after I created them because the pieces had already hardened up. So for the finishing touches on this plate, I'm using some UV resin to make it a little bit shiny. And now there's one dish down. I'm gonna make some ham, and this is a piece of like netting that I just found somewhere in a drawer. I'm just showing you can use a lot of different things to texture this air dry clay. And now I'm going over it with some brown paint for the outside of the meat. I'm using some polymer clay right now, and I'm just gonna draw in a bunch of lines. This is gonna be a mold for some lettuce. I'll go bake that, and then I can use this to press in the cold porcelain and peel it away to create some texture for the lettuce or the cabbages. So there we go. We have some little pieces of lettuce to decorate this tray. And I'm gonna glue those down using some tacky glue. And then add in some more of the little carrots that I made for the previous dish. And then I made a few tiny tomatoes to go on the plate as well. They were a little too pink at first, so I went back over them and painted them with more of a tomato red. For this one, I'm using Duraclear gloss varnish to go over the top of it instead of UV resin. It's a little bit less glass-like of a shine. I'm making some more leafy greens and adding them to another tray for the next dish, and these were sticking to everything and being a little bit annoying. So I think I'm gonna be... So I definitely liked the bigger pieces of lettuce than these. With this piece of meat, I let it dry before I went back and started slicing little slices off of it, but I created it the same way as the other meats that I've shown in the build. This is a tiny 2-inch Ziploc bag that I put a bunch of clay in and poked a hole in the end of so that I could squeeze out tiny amounts of clay without the entire thing drying up. I'm using that to make some little grapes. I learned the technique of using these tiny Ziploc bags from different YouTubers who create clay foods here online, and it came in so clutch for this build. I'm gonna paint the stems for the grapes, and then they looked a little bit flat to me, so I went back in, added some UV resin to a few of the grapes, and then also painted some of them a lighter green color so that there would be a little bit to distinguish all of the grapes and they didn't look exactly the same. I rolled out some dough balls and made some loaves of bread, and then painted them. And most of the realism for the bread comes from the painting of them, which I made them a light color tan and then did a darker brown on top and added a little bit of white for the flour. And no fantasy table would be complete without chunks of cheese. So I went and made a bunch of different chunks of cheese. I don't know what types of cheese these are, but I did look at images online of different wheels of cheese and tried to copy them. I wanted there to be different textures as well on the dishes on the table. So with this clay, I'm softening it up until I get more of an icing consistency. I use a little bit of water and some white glue to make it softer and mush it up into this mashed potato-like dish. And I used some pastels to sprinkle on top for the seasonings. I made the candles out of green stuff, which is a 2-part putty that you can mix together that hardens over time. And I'm painting it white and then just painting by hand the little flames on top of the candle. And lastly, I printed out some pictures to be some tapestries on the wall and glued them in place. And let's add a little bit of dry brushing to the table and chairs because they just needed a little bit something more to be more realistic. And now I'm going to glue those in place. I'm really happy with how all these dishes turned out. I made a few soups and other dishes that I made off camera but I basically used the same techniques that I showed you guys on the few dishes before. And last but not least, we definitely cannot forget to add in the candle. And the hunks of cheese. And last but not least, all of the forks and knives and spoons. And there we have it. A tiny feast fit for a king. It's time for me to give a huge shout out to some people who support the channel over on Patreon: Inez E, KNZ, Grouchy Old Man, Fatal Gift, Pat M, Suki T, Lizzie B, Ryan R, Cheryl R, Julia ST, Fred C, Isaac W, Lori R, Cheryl F, Alex P, Gabriel K, and Awkward Burb. I'm shouting out Cheryl twice because I messed up on the last one when I said your name. So thank you guys so much for being supporters on Patreon. And if you want to support the channel by liking or subscribing or giving a thumbs up, it really helps us grow over here. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, which should be out in a week. This one came out a little bit later because we had a lot of technical difficulties, but those have been cleared up. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.